This episode is brought to you in part by Mark Cycling. We all hate paying premiums for cycling components, right? And with the recent shortage in cycling components, you default to Amazon because your local bike shop doesn't have it. So you order the cheapest thing you find, you get it, and it's garbage. Well, let me tell you a secret. Mark Cycling makes dependable bar tape and other components that won't break the bank or sacrifice quality. Nick and I have been using their bar tape for quite some time and are really impressed with the quality and the cost. So if you'd like to give it a try, visit markcycling.com, that's M-A-R-Q-U-E cycling.com, and enter code HAMMER20 for 20% off at checkout. Now, back to the show. Welcome to 5339. This week is going to be a little bit different because Nick is on vacation. And that means I can do whatever I want. But I'm not going to do that because I have a weird sense of humor and have been accused of being extraordinarily boring. However, I'm going to give you a little update. We just got back from Pelotonia and had an amazing time. Special thanks to the team at Pelotonia for putting on an amazing event and raising over $12 million for innovative cancer research. We can't wait to do it again in 2022. So instead of the usual banter between Nick and myself, we're just going to get straight to the interview. Without further ado, let's welcome Cam Nicholls to 5339. Welcome to 5339, a podcast about cycling, for cyclists, by non-pros. Let's get to it. Welcome to the pod. Blah, 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 blah.
Roaring start.
Yeah. Well, hey, man. Yeah, we're pros. Whatever. All right. Try this again. Welcome to the 53 pod.
Do you want me to do it?
Yes.
Definitely don't leave that part out. That's awesome.
I'm on the struggle bus. All right. Sorry.
Cam, welcome to the 5339 podcast. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully we can leave that first little part in there.
We'll leave a blooper for Andrew for the first time ever. Andrew and I kind of came across your YouTube channel a while back, and we thought you had a unique story into the cycling content creation, and appreciate the humor and the combo of the coaching and obviously your partner Neill, the fitter, and really wanted to have you on and share your story and chat with you for a bit. Can you tell us about how the channel started? Because it is a unique story, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2017, I was mid-30s and I was working in Australia, but you could technically say I was working for corporate America because I was working for American software companies in Australia, and I had 2 kids. I was married, and I wasn't really passionate about what I did for a job. There was something in the back of my head constantly sort of coming to the forefront, urging me to have a crack at trying something new. And it just so happens that I found a passion for road cycling probably, I think, just as I was approaching my 30s. I think 29 is when I first got my road bike and took up road cycling, and I fell in love with the sport, became addicted, bought heaps of bikes, heaps of wheels, as everyone does. As part of that process of buying lots of bikes and lots of wheels, I started to use a lot of the websites that were available to buy and sell products. So there's obviously, everyone knows eBay. We've got Gumtree here in Australia. There's a big marketplace called Bike Exchange as well, which is prevalent in the US now. It's very prevalent here in Australia. And I said to my brother-in-law, we're at a barbecue one day, I said, someone's got to take on Bike Exchange. I've got no competitors. Cycling's a big industry. I don't like using Bike Exchange. eBay is not cycling specific. Somebody needs to do something about it. So he said, he sent me, it was very casual. And he sent me a message the next day. He said, let's catch up and brainstorm this idea. And I said, okay, no worries. Anyway, that idea turned into Bike Chaser. And we created this online marketplace for bikes on the side of our corporate jobs. And we dicked around with this thing for a couple of years. And it was in my mid-30s, I was about 36 at the time, 2017, that I was working in this American software company. And for the first time in my corporate job, I was about to get fired. I'd lost 2 monster deals for this company, back-to-back deals. And in the US, they'd call the sales guy, which is what I was, a glorified sales guy. I was called a sales director, but I was basically the sales guy. They call us the quarterback. You're quarterbacking the deals, and, you bring a team in. They're big enterprise deals, like multi-million-dollar deals. Sales cycles go for 12, 24 months. Lost 2 big ones in a row. Writing was on the wall. Whatever ego I had left, I proactively handed in my resignation. And that was a sliding doors scenario for me to go, all right, I've been working on this sort of passion project on the side called Bike Chaser for a couple of years. It hasn't really done anything because both my brother-in-law and I have been working corporate jobs. We can't really focus on it, but the lure of still earning a corporate salary was there and very difficult to leave behind. So I did grapple with the idea. It wasn't, I'd love to say, oh, I made the bold move and I decided to go for it, but it wasn't like that at all. It was kind of like sliding door scenario. So I decided to go bike chaser, and I left corporate, and it was actually through bike chaser. I knew nothing about websites. I knew nothing about SEO. I knew nothing about the cycling industry. I knew a little bit about bikes. That was it. And I was passionate about it. And I went on this massive learning curve for about 12 to 18 months, earned no money whatsoever. The capital that I had basically went to zero. So it was a bitter pill to swallow. But that journey of the cycling marketplace, which in order to get traffic to a website, you need to either pay for it or you need organic content, content that ranks. People search for bikes, people search for wheels.
Content is king.
Yeah.
Content is king. Exactly right. So we'd already spent all this money on a website. We didn't have a lot of money to spend on content or paying for traffic. So I learned how to make content. And as part of that journey, we got in an SEO expert, and I said, how do we make our articles outrank all these other articles? Because everyone would know there's cycling tips, there's bike radar, there's cycling news, there's all these websites that are very powerful websites that create these reviews, Cycling Weekly, etc. He said, you need to make videos, because if you make videos and put them into the article, people spend more time on the page because they read the content, they look at the pictures, and then they watch the video. And if people are spending more time on your page than other people's pages, you will outrank them. So we took that advice on board. I picked up my wife's old DSLR Canon camera, which had video mode, flicked it into video mode, had no idea what I was doing. If you look at some of my early videos on Bike Chaser, they're like cringeworthy. You'd like look at them and go, that guy looks like an absolute tool. And even I look at myself and go, yes, I was an absolute tool. And I was having a crack, you know what I mean? And I think that you got to start somewhere. Yeah. And it was interesting through that journey. I just fell in love with making videos, so much so that, to cut a long story short, with Bike Chaser in 2019, we ended up selling that business off, not for much. There was 4 partners in the end. And the reason why I sold it off is because I fell in love with making videos. And as you know, you started following my channel. Mid 2018 is when I started my own personal YouTube channel. It was after I'd started my own channel, that first 6 to 9 months, when I realized, yep, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to focus on. And that's why we put Bike Chaser on the market, sold it. And as a result of that, I now make cycling videos pretty much for a living, and the channel's been going for 3 years. So a lot of people say when you try and take or tackle something, that's your own, away from a corporate environment, quite often you end up in a place you did not expect to end up. And that was certainly the case for me in 2017 when I was presented with that sliding door scenario. If someone said to me, you'd be making YouTube videos and you'd be buying all these cameras and you'd know how to, work equipment, you'd be flying drones and all this kind of stuff, I would have told them to get out of the room. But it's just completely, a natural, organic sequence of events that led me into videos, and I fell in love with it. Now I can, I still don't make as much money as I used to in corporate, and I could be a few years away from that, or I may never do that. But for me, it's not what I've realized as part of that process as well, is I'm not so passionate about making money. That's not what really drives me. What I'm passionate about doing is doing what I'm passionate about. And I make enough money now to be able to live comfortably. We're very grateful to live where we are and what we've got. And I'm very grateful that I found a passion in life for my job, which doesn't feel like a job because I love it so much. So it's a pretty long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how I ended up making YouTube videos.
You talk about it being a passion, and I think that really comes through in your videos. As we were prepping for this interview, I was really thinking, you're kind of the prime example of the saying that, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. And I feel like that kind of describes you a lot, because you're doing something you love every day. And yeah, there's probably harder days than others, but it's something you truly enjoy doing.
Yeah, 100%. And, I do speak to a lot of my friends who are still in corporate, and they often ask me how I'm going, and they fantasize about taking the leap and having a crack as well. And I heard it so many times before I did, but you just got to give it a go. And I think, for me, when I first did it, I was like, well, look, if it doesn't work, at least I've tried it. At least I've had a year out. I've given it a go. And it just so happened that I got a year out and I didn't want to go back. And I was fortunate as well. I should mention that at the time of that happening, my wife has an essential oil business, and it was pure luck. Probably about 9 to 10 months, it was just before a year out of my corporate job, I'd run out of money. So my salary was going like this, all the capital I had in the bank. And my wife, who had a sort of small little business, oils business, all of a sudden mine was going down and hers was going up.
Oh, nice.
And I actually sat down with her and I said, look, I've run out of money. I like to pay for the mortgage and the bills and the kids and all this kind of stuff. I think I'm going to have to go back to corporate. And she said to me, she said, if you can help support the kids, and that's what I do these days. Like I'm a 50%, I call it a 50% stay home dad because this morning I drop the kids to school. I'll pick them up this afternoon. I'll drive them to dance this afternoon. My wife and I do sort of one day on, one day off, and we swap. She said, if you can support me with the kids, I reckon I can take my essential oils business and it can help support what's needed for the time being. And it was kind of like her salary basically supported us for a good 12 months before my YouTube kicked off and the coaching, which we'll talk about later. Now we're kind of back to where we were, but there was kind of some luck in there as well, I must say, because if it wasn't for that, I could be back in a corporate job right now, which there's nothing wrong with. I know, the corporate environment is great, nothing against it. I miss certain parts of it a lot. And I know my brother-in-law went back to corporate and he prefers to work in corporate. So it was just for
Yeah.
me, I never really felt that drive or passion working in that environment.
There's a certain security to it that you don't get in self-employed space.
100%. Particularly nowadays, a lot of small
Yeah.
businesses are struggling given what's happening around the world. But fortunately for the cycling industry, as with the COVID situation, the cycling industry has boomed. It's been quite unbelievable.
And
Yeah, have you noticed a more of a growth since COVID hit in your channel subscriptions or views? Or do you
and
think it's more in line with kind of the trajectory you were on before COVID?
It's hard to say. I didn't notice any noticeable spikes, but I did notice a lot more comments from people saying, haven't ridden in years, pulled the road bike out because I'm now working from home and I'm now getting back into cycling. So I noticed a lot of those comments. From my coaching perspective, it was kind of interesting that, the online course that we offer is a lot of people were doing that initially because they had an event that they were targeting and they wanted to get good for the event. But since I've been running that coaching business, that was only at the very start. For the vast majority of the road cycling academy being running, it's been mainly COVID. So most people's goals have transitioned to just wanting to better improve their FTP or something like that. So it's been hard. I haven't witnessed any tangible things, but there's been some anecdotal things that certainly suggest that's the case.
Yeah. Since you brought it up, I mean, you obviously went from a passion project in bike chasers to, Cam Nicholls' YouTube channel, and now you've got a new one with the Road Cycling Academy. Where did the desire to coach or inspiration to coach come from?
Well, it actually came from YouTube, would you believe it or not? So when I started the YouTube channel, there's kind of 4 or maybe 5 primary ways. A lot of people get interested about this as well. Is how do you make money from YouTube? So number one is you make ad revenue. So you see those little ads that pop up while you're watching the YouTube video. Number 2 is you can get like sponsored, deals. So I'll mention a company for 45 seconds or 60 seconds and they'll pay you a rate. You can sell merchandise. That's another big one, which I haven't been very good at in the past. And the other big one, I think there's one other one in there, but the other big one, and this, I did an online course for YouTube before I started YouTube to make sure I kind of had a framework or a strategy in place. And this fourth one was you need to create your own product or service that you can sell to your audience that's relevant or relates to what you're talking about. So I thought coaching was a great one because I'd been coached. I'd had really good experience with coaching online because YouTube's international audience. So we created this online course called the Up Level Road Cycling course. And originally I actually got my old coach, a guy called David Sturb, to come on and he would help me with the video tutorials and he was the head coach and I was promoting and marketing. We kind of split the course and I was selling it through the channel. But it was interesting in the lead up to selling that course. I thought I need to make some training content because I hadn't really made any training content to share how do you get faster or stronger on the bike. So the first video I created was the number one mistake cyclists make with training. And it's been one of my most popular videos of all time. And we talked about this offline yesterday about the zone 2 training, aerobic training, because most cyclists just go and smash it all day long.
no, they would never.
Yes, exactly right. They really miss out on building aerobic fitness adaptations. So I talked about, the video was essentially about zone 2 training. That video took off and it's been one of my most popular videos of all time. And I continued to make other training related content to promote the course. And all those videos seemed to perform really well. And I recognized that I really enjoyed making those videos. I enjoyed talking about training. I felt like I was good at it because the views and the watch time of the videos, the analytics were telling me, well, people are watching and they're engaging, they're sharing this video around. And I thought, well, rather than use my old coach, why don't I become a coach myself? And then I can, don't have to split the course revenue. The revenue can all come to me. And
Yeah.
it's a new pathway for me because I love making YouTube videos, but it's always good to have other things that you're doing. So yeah, I took on the coaching route. So I officially became a coach, and then the course changed. So Dave Sturt is no longer involved. And now with the growth of the channel, as you will well know, for those who watch the channel, the RCA training tips show used to be on my personal channel.
Mm-hmm.
But now the RCA, the Road Cycling Academy, which was once just a little side project, is now a full separate entity, and I created a separate channel. So the RCA training tips show now resides on a different channel. It's a separate entity. And Neill Stanbury, the bike fitter, who I just met by chance. I'd heard he was an exceptional bike fitter. Somebody said, you got to go see him in Brisbane. I spoke to him. I said, I make YouTube content. Would you be interested in me making a YouTube video about my bike fit? He goes, absolutely. Bring the camera down. So I brought the camera down, did the bike fit, and I was editing the video. When I'm making videos, I'm kind of like in another world. I'm thinking about cameras and audio and all that. You
Yeah.
know what it's like,
Oh
You
yeah.
want to make sure everything's working perfectly. You're probably looking at the audio now, just make sure it's still going up and down. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He
Oh
is.
yeah.
He's making sure I do my lip smack thing.
Don't do it, man.
Yeah, exactly right. When I'm in the editing process, that's kind of my zen. And I'm listening to this guy talk, Neill Stanbury. I'm like, man, this guy's super articulate. He's really good on camera. This is amazing. Published a video, super popular. And I rang Neill back up and I said, mate, would you be interested in doing more videos? And he said, absolutely. I've had about, 10 leads from that video. So I beats doing Facebook marketing. I'd rather sit down with you and have a chat. So that's how it sort of progressed into Neill being part of the RCO Training Tip Show, which is now on a separate channel. So the Road Cycling Academy channel, which I run in addition to my personal channel, is now focused purely on cycling training tips and bike fitting tips with myself and Neill Stanbury. And the beauty for Neill is actually, so I share 50% of the revenue on the Road Cycling Academy with Neill now because he's doing 50% of the content.
Yeah.
So we share the ad revenue now. But for him as well, he enjoys making the videos, but also it's an incredible lead generator. And there's nothing slippery or slimy about that because we don't really sell his business. People just listen to him talk. And the same applies for, my channel or the Road Cycling Academy where I talk about training tips. I'm not selling the up-level road cycling course. I'm just talking about training. And people, this is one of the really powerful things about YouTube because people go to YouTube to watch. It sounds to me, this guy knows what he's talking about. I want to get a bike fit. I want to improve my road cycling. And as a result, at some point in time along their journey, they'll either go get a bike fit with Neill or they'll sign up to the Road Cycling Academy course.
That's awesome. So you kind of alluded to it talking about the first couple questions, but going back to where you kind of got started, right? Like, how did you get into it? What kind of led you into it?
In my 20s, I traveled. So this was back in the day when you could travel the world. So I did South America, I did the US, I did the UK, I did get a degree. I did do a bit of corporate jobs, but my 20s was all about, really exploring. And there came a point in time there where I got sick of going out every weekend and getting trashed, drinking, going to the bars and all that kind of stuff, going clubbing and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And so sort of, well, what else could I do? Somebody said you should do the triathlons. So I signed up to a few triathlons and I hired a bike for the triathlon leg. And then I decided, no, I want to do this more often. I like it. It's, it's making me train on the weekends. I'm getting fitter, feel better. So I bought a Scott CR1, I think it is. It's like entry-level carbon bike for about $2,500 AUD, which is probably about, $1,800 USD.
Mm-hmm.
And a mate of mine around the same time of me buying the bike had bought, he's a very good mate of mine. He'd bought a Specialized Roubaix and he bought his because a couple of his mates were doing local bunch rides in Melbourne or group
Okay.
rides.
Yeah.
I know you call it in the US. We're talking about that the other day. The bunch riding or group riding scene in Melbourne is amazing. It's really like in Australia, it's by far the best. There's a road in Melbourne called Beach Road. And Melbourne's a big city. It's about 5 million people, right? So it's a big
Yeah.
city. And this road runs along the beach. And in the mornings, particularly on Saturday morning, but even early mornings, like cyclists can pretty much, there's 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way. Cyclists can take up the full left-hand lane. Limited traffic lights are on the beach. So there's lots of cyclists and the bunch rides. And there's a bunch ride actually called the Hell Ride, which is highly controversial bunch ride. Quite often it has a police escort or multiple police escorts to make sure people aren't running red lights because it's going 50 Ks an hour and the bunch ride can get up to 100 or 200 riders. So it's
Wow.
like 200 meters in length.
Yeah, you've done videos about the Hell Ride?
Yeah, like a lot of people, look, probably about 10 years ago, unfortunately, a guy ran through, one of the guys in the Hell Ride ran through a red light, cleaned up a guy who was an elderly guy and unfortunately killed him.
Oh,
And
Oh,
that hit, yeah, and that hit the news big time. And the Hell Ride never recovered from that. Like it still runs, but it's always had a bad name because people
yeah.
remember that. People, especially people that live in the Bayside area. And that's a very unfortunate incident. But I must say it has improved, and I absolutely love that ride. So much fun. But there's all these other rides as well during the week, North Road ride. Anyway, back to what
now
you
is
were
that
saying. So,
is the Hell Ride with? Is that the one you rode with Caleb?
no, so that the one I rode with Caleb Ewan, because Caleb Ewan, his parents-in-law live in Noosa. So he came here on a holiday with his wife and his kid, bought a place in my local area, actually Sunshine Beach. And then he
Okay.
did all while he was here, just because, he's got lots of money now, obviously, like where he bought a house was like multi-million-dollar house. He did all the local bunch rides, and there's one that goes along the beach on the Saturday, which is, I think, the one you're referencing, which is it's like a mini Hell Ride, not as fast, not as big, but it is along the beach, and it's up here in Noosa. And that was super fun to have Caleb Ewan here, just ripping apart the bunch rides.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was awesome. It was awesome. Yeah, that's one of the great things about cycling. You can have like pros or semi-pros rock up to the bunch ride, and you can ride with them, and they just tear your legs off. But it's just so much like
Yeah.
there's not many other sports that you can do that.
Well, the reason that story stands out is because he made a very rookie mistake with his electronic group set, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he did. They were flat. He ran into the hill in quite a big gear, and that's why he got out. I was stupidly on his wheel, and he's like 4'3", so there's no draft. And I was on his wheel, and yeah, he was in a big ring, and he just got out of the saddle and just charged it. And I lasted to the sort of crest, and then the second one time it goes up again, and then I sort of just I got dropped. I couldn't handle the speed. He's just too much of a weapon. Obviously, we all know that.
Oh yeah.
He only had one gear to play with as well, which made it even hard for everyone else.
Yeah, that just cracks me up because you hear that a lot with people that are against electronic shifting. They're like, I don't want to run out of battery, and it's like, one of the world's best riders is
Yeah.
out on a bunch ride and forgot to charge his Di2.
Yeah, it's hilarious, isn't it? We digress there a little bit. So what happened was this mate of mine bought a bike because some of his mates at the bunch rides in Melbourne, and he kept convincing me, mate, you got to come try the bunch rides. They're amazing. And I'm like, no, mate, I do triathlons, blah, blah, blah. And this convincing went on for months. And then all of a sudden one day, I said, all right, I'll come it's called the street race. It's on Tuesday evening in Melbourne on the beach. The traffic sort of died down. You go down to this like famous spot called Morty Alec along the beach, and you just cruise down at sort of 35 kilometers per hour. Not really sure what that might be in miles, 26 miles an hour or something like that, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right about there.
there.
Yeah. And then you hook around Morty Alec, and then you come back along the beach, and it's probably the fastest out of all of them. You're going, 55 kilometers per hour in some sections, even 60. I got dropped probably within the first minute, maybe two. But I'd never been exposed to that group ride or bunch ride culture. I'd never seen it before. So that was my first time. And that first minute of being in there and getting sucked along was like so exhilarating. And I was just like, man, I have to come back and do this bunch ride. I have to try and complete it. That was like my goal. And I
Yeah.
just became fixated on it. And then I wanted to know where all the other bunch rides were. Then I wanted to know
Mhm.
where I could go race. You know how it progresses. So
Yeah, the first bunch ride you do is kind of a gateway to the rest of the.
exactly right. And it's the adrenaline, it's the ability to set goals within the bunch. Because even when you hang on to the bunch, then the next goal is, can I get to the front and pull a turn?
Mhm.
Then the next goal is, can I get to the front and pull multiple turns? So
See,
there's a lot of
Nick?
what's that?
See, Nick, it's not the only one.
Yeah.
He always
Yeah.
gives me crap. We have this one Tuesday / sometimes Wednesday bunch ride where I don't know the leader too all that well, but he'll be like, oh, he's kicking you out, of the bunch
Yeah.
ride because I'm too
You're
far ahead.
you're doing a solo ride in the bunch ride. It's supposed to be social, and Andrew's out there leading by himself. He's attacking the
There's
group.
usually the A group that I'm with, but if those guys aren't there, I still maintain that same
Yeah,
pace.
it used to be two separate rides. It's kind of morphed into one. There was an A ride and a B ride, and it's the way the club has gone. It's just turned into one ride. So we always end up in two groups, and I'll hang back with the back group. And there's a couple guys that have been on the struggle bus on the last couple of weeks, and
Classic.
I don't want to leave the group leader alone with one other guy, so I'll hang back with them. And
It's very
you're
thoughtful of you.
well, I've been there, I mean,
Yeah.
my first My first group ride was out of a shop, and I'm actually fortunate enough to lead it now, which is pretty cool. So it's come full circle for me. But I get it too. I mean, when you've got 15, 20 guys that you're kind of responsible for, it's helpful to have an extra set of eyes or two,
Absolutely.
making sure everything's going smoothly. Because God forbid, you don't want to have an incident like you had on the hell ride.
No, exactly right. And look, the hell ride is still quite out of control, really. Like people just go and smash it. Anyone rocks up. It's interesting because it's such a busy cycling route. They say it's the busiest cycling route or route in the world, Long Beach Road on a Saturday morning. There's like literally peloton after peloton, like thousands, like a sea of cyclists. But when you've got
Wow.
this huge steam train coming along, being the hell ride, there's a section between Morty Alec and Black Rock where it finishes, where it's really popular, and people see it go past, and they jump on, go, I'm going to see if I can jump on the hell ride for a short period of time, and then it just gets out of hand. I've been to similar bunch rides in Adelaide. There's one called the Sassy Swap Off, which is the South Australian Institute of Sport. It's their
It's a
their
great
main
name.
guys go and do it. And if you're a good A grader or a good B grader, even you can go do the bunch ride. But if anyone tries to jump in that's all over the place, or somebody tries to do it that can't do it, there's guys in the bunch that will just say, no, sorry, you've got to step out. And they'll be very polite about it. And it's very organized. And I kind of like that organization and those people that sort of, they don't, that no one's written a contract that said you run it, but they kind of, there's three or four main guys there. And it
Yeah.
just makes the bunch feel so much safer.
That's the one thing we have a problem with sometimes in the States is people will invite themselves to rides and nobody's comfortable enough to say, "This maybe
No.
isn't right for you." I
Mm.
mean, we are heavier riders, and I had a guy that came to our group ride for the first time last year, and he's like sizing me up before the ride. He's like, "Well, if you can keep up, I'm sure I have no problem." And he's a guy that rode mostly rails to trails, which is no undulation at all. I mean, they're all old train tracks, obviously,
It's usually a max of like 3% grade.
Right.
and we're from Pittsburgh where there's really not flat anything. So you're either going up 7% or you're going down 7%. There's not a whole lot of flat when you're on the roads. And we ended up dropping this guy like 2.5 miles into the ride. We're sitting at the first regroup spot and waiting for him, and he never came. He turned
Yeah, right.
around, and
Turn
like
around.
you feel bad because it's his first experience with the club, and it wasn't a positive one. And now you've lost somebody and potentially are losing other people because word travels. And I think it's easier if you can just say, hey, maybe this isn't for you. And we're not always great at that in the States.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think a lot of regions aren't. And I think that's one of the problems with cycling is people just take their own path. There's no, I think my path was wrong. I went for the fast bunch rides too quickly before I went and did probably one of the hardest bunch rides before I even knew how to ride a bunch, which is ridiculous. I didn't know how to hold the wheel properly. I didn't know what rolling turns look like. And I can only imagine I would have looked like an absolute spanner in those first, few bunch rides until you make some mistakes. Melbourne's quite notorious. There's a couple of guys or a few guys from this club that they'll have a go at you if you really do anything silly. And initially that happened to me and a few of my mates, one of my mates in particular. But we reflect now and we're actually grateful that they did that because that's how we learned, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
No,
the best way to learn cycling is from other cyclists, really.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean,
No, I great.
even if it's someone correcting you on a bunch ride, I've experienced that where I grew up playing hockey. So if you give me a lane, I'm going to take a lane. Well, I took a lane that I shouldn't have in a bunch ride, and I got told that for it. But I was like, dude, you gave me the space. I'm going to take it because I didn't want to slam on the brakes.
Yeah,
And you're
absolutely.
yelling at me for giving me the wrong side, and then I take the wrong side.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
No, and that's the other thing. Sometimes I've seen people get yelled at for doing the right thing.
Oh yeah,
So you got
I
to,
think we all have.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that kind of lends also the other question. So whenever it comes to like the more structured, workouts and bunch rides, how do you kind of balance that with a training plan and allowing more bunch or social rides to kind of intermix with a training plan?
Yeah, so look, what we do in our structured training plans that we have, we allow for one bunch ride a week. So, what we recognize, and it could be a social ride, it's quite up. Social rides are typically never social. They turn into some type of competitive, I call it a dick
Andrew has
swinging
no idea what
contest.
you're talking about.
No, I'm not competitive at all.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's just go for a cruise up this, 10-mile hill. And all of a sudden, 1 mile up, it's turning into a smash fest and it was supposed to be an easy ride. So that's very common. So yeah, what we prescribe at the Road Cycling Academy is no more than 3 high intensity workouts a week. I think anything more than 3 is too much,
Hmm.
because you'll become fatigued. So 3 high intensity sessions a week. We like to say to do 2 high intensity interval training sessions. So one of those could be a hill repeat session where you're going up and down a hill, where you bring lactate in, lactate out, lactate in, lactate out in a very controlled manner. You might do some low cadence work as well up the hill, because hills are a good opportunity to do some low cadence work. And not many cyclists do low cadence work, which is interesting because they have an underdeveloped musculoskeletal
Uh-huh.
system. And if they develop their musculoskeletal system, there's a big opportunity for improvement there, like really big. It's almost like
I, I
having an up.
I will say that's my least favorite training to do. I hate doing low cadence work, but I mean it's so good for you. I mean it's such a necessity.
Absolutely. It is. And it gets easier as well, like the more you do it. So yeah, one could be a hill repeat session. The other session could be, maybe an indoor trainer. You might pick a Sufferfest session or a Zwift, structured session. I'd do one session working VO2 max or anaerobic and the other session working threshold. So you're mixing it up and you
Hmm.
might do, say, threshold, maybe 10 minutes on, 3 minutes off, 10 minutes on, 3 minutes off kind of thing. And then the other ride would be the bunch ride. And the reason why we don't want to do too many bunch rides is because, bunch rides are they're great fun. That's why we want to leave them in there. And bunch rides are a lot of people's motivation. They want to they come to the roadside. Okay, I want to get stronger. My goal is I want to get better at the bunch ride. I want to pull more turns. I want to, look good to my mates. They don't say that specifically, but that's what's happening in the back of their head.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
And we all get that, it's, everyone's looking at the bunch, you go to the cafe afterwards and everyone's, oh, you had a good ride today. We all love to have those conversations, but they're very sporadic. So you never get the opportunity. One of the biggest things about the high intensity interval training sessions is they enable you to do structured things like, as I said, working low cadence, work on your musculoskeletal system. But the other big thing is they teach your working muscles how to better tolerate the rise and fall of the lactate system. Everyone calls it lactate acid shutting your muscles down. Well, it's actually not. The lactate system rises, and the lactate system is actually there to support the output, because the output's becoming too great to support that output using aerobic energy. So the lactate system rises and it supports that higher end output. But when the lactate system rises, it also leaves a number of byproducts behind in the working muscles, notably hydrogen ions. Now, the high intensity interval training session gives you the opportunity to flush it out. And then you can go again, flush it out, go again, flush it out, go again. So by doing that, your muscles become very good at tolerating lactate because of that in out session or sessions that you're doing. However, when you're doing a bunch ride, as you know, there's pretty much lactate in your working muscles the whole time because it surges, and then you sit up for a bit, then it surges again, and then maybe it depends on the bunch ride. There's a fast one. Then you might pull a few turns, and even if you do bring lactate out and back in, quite often it's very unstructured. So you might do a big effort, then you might sit in the bunch for 5 minutes, etc. So you never really teach yourself that tolerance to lactate. So that's why we suggest 2 sessions high intensity interval training and 1 session as a bunch ride per week. And in your easier weeks, then you wouldn't do you would actually scrap those 2 high intensity sessions. You'd just ride mainly aerobically. You might do a test on some fresh legs, so a benchmark climb, a Strava com that you want to hit up, or an FTP test. And then you still maintain that social ride on a Saturday, but you might take it a little bit easier in an easier week, do less turns, etc. So yeah, bunch riding is such a critical tool, I think, even when you're doing a structured training program, because they're so much fun. They get you out of bed. Too much high intensity interval training, it becomes draining. You get over it. So, and the other thing is there's a lot of intangibles that you can get in a bunch ride. So
Yeah.
a lot of people say, oh, my FTP hasn't increased that much in the last, 8 weeks. And my local Strava com, I only shaved a few seconds off it, but man, I feel so much better in the bunch ride. I can pull so many more turns. Every time I pull a turn, I recover really quickly. I can go again. And I was like, well, look, that is a massive improvement
Hmm.
in fitness because you're now better at tolerating lactate. You can go again. So they also become a really good benchmarking tool to see how you're progressing with your cycling.
You mentioned Sufferfest. I think you've got some sort of a partnership or something with them. What is it that you like about Sufferfest? I mean, I'm a Sufferfest user. And what I liked about it was that they didn't base everything just off of the FTP, because I'm more of a punchy rider. So if I'm doing sprint work based off a 200% FTP, I'm not even in my sprint zone. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why I liked the Sufferfest. I'm curious, as from a coaching standpoint, why you are a fan of the Sufferfest.
Well, I think they've got the best testing protocol, which is for FTP testing, which is the ramp test, or they call it the half Monty.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I like the half Monty as an FTP test is because, firstly, it's indoors. So some people listening to this, I may not have an indoor trainer. So then you do the 20-minute test outside. The problem with the 20-minute test outside is, do you have a good area? You can do the 20-minute test. Quite often you can be impacted by the environment. So it could be cold, hot, it could be windy. There could be traffic lights that might come up, or cars, or, all sorts of stuff that can happen outside. Whereas indoors, it can be mostly, the temperature can be mostly regulated. There's no cars, no traffic lights. So you're on the trainer. Now you can do the 20-minute test inside on the trainer, but that's like not a nice thought. And to actually do it, I've done an hour almost at FTP, and that was death. So I
Oh,
definitely don't recommend doing that
sounds
on the
like
trainer.
torture.
Yeah, torture.
Yeah, how long did it take you to recover from that?
I was feeling a bit off for a week, I reckon. Just, yeah,
Oh.
my max heart rate is about 182, and I overreached in that session because it was hot as well. I think I went to 187, so 5 beats over my max, because my heart just kept drifting. And yeah, it wasn't nice, but yeah, it's the 20-minute test as well, all out of the trainer is not a nice thought. And look, you can do it, but the question you got to ask yourself, and this is why I like the half Monty, are you willing to do it every 6 to 8 weeks when you're training, when you're looking to improve? Now, if you're not looking to improve, who cares about the FTP test? Just go to the bunch ride, do whatever. But when you're actually looking to train for an event, you're looking to improve, you want to have some benchmarks in there. One is a local com challenge, as I sort of briefly mentioned before. Find a hill climb in your area that's, somewhere between 3 to 20 minutes in length, and go smash it in an easy week, go smash it up there and see what you get. And then what you would do is you would alternate every rest week. So at the Road Cycling Academy, we use 3-week builds. You could do 4-week builds. So it could be every third or fourth week, go to a benchmark climb, and then go do an FTP test in your next rest week, which would be another 3 to 4 weeks after that. So what you end up doing is you end up alternating in your rest weeks between a com challenge and an FTP test. And the beauty of the half Monty is it's hard for about 3 or 4 minutes, because it's a ramp to failure. So those final few ramps are difficult, but it's not, it's hard to stuff up as well. Like with the 20-minute test, there's a pacing effect, which I forgot to mention as well. A lot of people can't pace them properly. This you just go till you can't go anymore. And yeah, the last couple of ramps are really going to hurt, but it's not too daunting. And as a result of that, people are more inclined to do it. And then if they're more inclined to do it, they've got a better visibility of how they're improving. And the good thing about the half Monty is it's got a 20-minute sustained effort after the ramp, as you may know, which is not a 20-minute all-out hard effort. It's like a zone 3 kind of effort, which measures heart rate. And off the back of that test, not only do you get your FTP, you also get your maximal aerobic power, or your VO2 max, and you get your lactate threshold heart rate. So there's 3 tangible numbers that you can use to benchmark to see how you're performing down the track. So I really like the half Monty. And I also like Zwift is awesome for, it's the most fun, social, racing, etc. But I find the high intensity interval training sessions on Zwift are quite random, and they're a bit boring. With high intensity interval training sessions on the Sufferfest, I find the structure of them, they've been built out with more intelligence. It seems like there are workouts where you're working threshold. There are workouts where you're working VO2 max. There are workouts where you're working anaerobic. Sometimes they bring them all together, but when they bring them all together, it makes sense. The ones on Zwift, and there's a YouTuber called Dylan Johnson who's actually made some good content about this, that they're kind of, looks like, they're like these building blocks, and it's like some young kids just come in and like put all these blocks together. And
yeah, I've seen his videos on that.
yeah, and look, they're not as bad as that, but it does, some of the workouts are like, this doesn't even make any sense to me. So the Sufferfest, the structure of the workouts are better, and I like the fact that you're watching like, the Tour de France, or you're watching Paris-Roubaix, and it's to music, and they seem to go really fast. The hour goes really. That's why I like the Sufferfest. And when people join the Road Cycling Academy, they do get a free 12-week access pass, so they can use it if they've got an indoor trainer. And we do the testing on there, and some of our programs include high intensity interval training sessions on the Sufferfest. And let's face it, high intensity interval training sessions on the road, they do suck a little bit. Like, I think hill repeats is okay because you got a hill, you go up and down, up and down. But threshold efforts and VO2 max efforts that are just on flat roads, it's hard to get motivated to do it. But if you get on a trainer, you put it in ERG mode, which is where you lock the power in and you say, all right, Sufferfest, you tell me what to do. My legs just need to pedal. And then off you go. It's a much easier, more efficient way of knocking out a good VO2 max session, a good anaerobic session, etc.
Yeah, and you're going to hit your power numbers that way too, because there's no way to be above or below the target you're set.
Exactly right. You're so targeted to the power that you need to hit. Whereas on the road, it's a little bit more difficult, and you get distracted by in Australia, there's a kookaburra that flies across, or a kangaroo jumps across the road, or something like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, damn both of you. I guess I know what I'm gonna try this winter. I've been putting off Sufferfest for like almost a year now, and I've just been sticking with Zwift. But now that I've discovered these things called rest days and Zone
Yeah,
2,
nice.
I'll probably give that a go.
Yeah, and look, if you do it, hit me up and I'll tell you where to start. I think one of the problems with the Sufferfest is people go in and go, what workout should I do? I'll do that one. And they select a workout and it destroys them, because there are some workouts on the Sufferfest. There's actually one called the Defender, which is one of the hardest 1 hour workouts you can do.
Is that the one that they've pretty much designed that you aren't supposed to get through it? And if you do, your FTP's incorrectly set. There's one of them that's set up like that, and I can't remember if it's the Defender.
Is there? I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't be surprised. This one, it's funny. Like, we
Setting
use
you up to fail.
we use a progressive overload technique in all our programs, which is how most people should train when they train with structure. Is you progressively make your programs harder as the weeks go by.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And at the end, we've got a program called Beat Your Mates Around the Block, which is a general speed and strength program just designed for getting stronger at bunch riding, criteriums, that kind of thing. And at the end of that program, we have the Defender, and I get emails probably every other week with the title of the emails from a member, and the title is the Defender. And I know what they're going to say. That was the hardest session I've ever done in my life. I barely got through it, or I didn't get through it, or I'm really, and I think that's a problem with the Sufferfest. People will go in and go, oh yeah, I'll do the Defender, and it'll tear their legs off, and it will be the most pain they've ever been through. And they're like, I don't like the Sufferfest. So I think you got to make sure that you're doing the right workouts based off of your current fitness level and where you want to go.
That's awesome. You kind of alluded to it with speaking of some of the training, but we're kind of jumping back a little bit to a little bit more about you in terms of your background. So you've done different types of kind of racing. Which is your favorite? Like, what do you find to be your sweet spot?
I don't think I've got a sweet spot. I think I'm best at rolling turds in a bunch. I think that's actually my best skill. But you can't win that. That's not something that you win.
I mean, you can win it in your mind, but no one else knows you're competing. So yeah.
Yeah. Like, you win it when you get back to the cafe and you go, geez, Cam, you did a good bunch ride today. It's like, oh, thanks, mate. And then you all go home, and then it's, there's no medal around your neck.
Yeah, I was just say there's no podium for that.
Yeah. So I'm actually not a bad hill climber, but I'm too heavy to be a good hill climber, if that makes any sense. So, with my mates and stuff, I'm normally out, in the top, top one or two in the hill climbs. But then when I go compete against, serious guys that are 20 kilos lighter than me, they'll smash me. My crit, I'm good at riding a crit, might get a breakaway, but I've got no sprint. So to try and win an A grade or category 1, as you call it in the US, crit, I have come so close on 2 occasions where what I will do, because I've got a good sort of VO2 max and I can put in a good VO2 max effort on fatigue legs, I'll try and go off the front at the end in the last lap or two and see if I can stay away. And there's been 2 instances where I've been 30 meters, 25, 30 meters from the finish line thinking, I finally won this bike race. And then like 10 guys go sprinting past me. I'm like, yeah. So that's happened a couple of times. And look, with road racing, I think the problem with road racing for me now, and maybe it was different back in my junior days, is it requires a lot of time on the bike. If you're going to do, a 120 kilometer road race, which is, 3.5 hours of hard, solid riding. You really got to train long hours. You got to train really hard. And I don't really have that time available anymore. So I think for me, I like crits because they're an hour. It's people use the analogy of ripping the Band-Aid off. You just, it hurts, but you take it off and it's
Just do
done.
it. Yeah.
Just do it. And you don't have to train. Like, you need to have a solid, I think, 7 or 8 hours a week of training time to be able to perform well in crits, but you don't need, 12, 13 hours like you do with road races. And the problem for me where I live now is there aren't really any local crits. You got to travel quite kind of far. But I think with crits, it's very much, a law of averages thing. The more that you do, the more opportunity that you've got, because you'll find yourself in a position more often than not. With a road race, they're only every now and then. And if you target, I've had this disappointment before, you might train really hard for a road race. I'll train really hard for there's the biggest one-day road race in Australia called the Melbourne to Warrnambool, which is a 230-kilometre road race, and I crashed
Okay.
out at 130, and I put all my eggs in my
Oh.
basket. I've trained for months, and I'm just like, that there was so much sacrifice there, and I didn't even get through it. So with the crit, assuming they're in your local area, they happen almost weekly. If you crash out or you get dropped, who cares?
Yeah.
Go back and do it again
Yeah.
the next week. So I like crit racing.
That's
Now, is
awesome.
there anything you're prepping for currently?
Yeah, so fortunately, the men's masters nationals titles, which I did last year in the Gold Coast in Queensland, is actually now on the Sunshine Coast. So it's in my local area. It's in October, so I will train for that. The crit road race. I won't do the time trial because I don't have a time trialist body by any means. I'm too wide, and I've got big wide hips and I've got big wide shoulders, and being on a time trial bike just doesn't work for
Yeah,
me.
it's like I feel you. I'm like a cinder block on a TT bike. It's
Yeah, we
just,
both are.
it's whatever. I throw out the power and just deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
exactly
become that
right.
era.
So I'll train for that. My only obstacle is that this year is all my mates from school I'm still very good mates with about 10, 12 mates from school. I finished school in 1999, so we're all turning 40 this year. In fact, I turn 40 next Monday. So
Happy early birthday.
Yeah.
Thank
Happy
you. It's
birthday.
my last few days in my 30s. And there's about 4 or 5 parties between now and then. And also one of my best mates is and I'm in his bridal party, is getting married. So I've got to go down for a Bucks party back down in Melbourne. So it's a 2-hour flight away. Got to go down for the wedding. Got to get it down for another 3 or 4 40s. So I think I'm going to get disrupted with a lot of drinking and enjoying myself. But that's life. You know what I mean? What I've realized is I think a lot of people, and I used to do this, you get so anal with your cycling training because you want to perform well.
Yeah.
And then you do the race and you're like, oh, I didn't perform as well as I wanted to, or I performed quite well at events when I hadn't trained that hard and I had been drinking. So these days I'm kind of like, and I'm not a big drinker by any means, but I've said drinking a few times there, you probably think I'm an alcoholic, but
Nah.
yeah, I think you just got to go with unless you're a semi-pro and you're really trying to get serious. If you're just an amateur recreational cyclist, I think you just got to go with the flow of life. And if shit gets in the way, if life gets in the way, kids, family, parties, like just enjoy it and embrace
Yeah.
it. And, if you can't hit your 12 hours a week and it's 8 hours a week, so be it. So you can still go and enjoy the race and have a good time.
I do secretly love those moments where you roll up to hypothetically a gravel race that's 46 miles and spans about 7,500 feet, and you're a little hungover and you end up performing the best you've ever done. I don't know how that happens, but that's just one of those things. It's like, huh, that was unexpected.
Yeah, that's funny. I've actually got a quick story to tell on that. I was at a training camp in Bright in Victoria, which is the Alpine region of Australia.
Okay.
And there's a big hill climb there called Mount Buffalo. And we're at the end of this is when I used to work for ride for an amateur team called Inform, where we'd finished the training camp. The next day we were going to ride up Buffalo casually, according to our coach. He didn't tell us that he was going to smash it. So we all went out that night, the whole team, and we had pizza, and I reckon I had 5 or 6 pints, like big beers, so like a lot of beer.
Yeah.
And the next morning I got up and I don't really want to go. Like I was a bit hungover. And anyway, we got to the bottom of Buffalo, and all of a sudden the coach goes, "All right, it's on." And so, I thought it was supposed to be an easy day. He goes, "Nuh." So we all just sort of like smashed it up
Oh.
Buffalo, and it's almost a 1-hour climb. Like it's a really long
Ooh.
climb. And I reckon that was my best 1 hour I have ever done in my entire life, of one large pizza and about, 6 or 7 pints. So
Hey
I
man,
hear where you're
that's all
coming from.
carbo loading. You're
exactly
ready to go.
right. Yeah.
Is that, I guess we can call that beer legs? Is that what that
Yeah,
is?
exactly right. Yeah. I think it can have the opposite effect though. I've heard of
Oh
that
yeah.
happening before as well. Yeah.
There are
It's-
rumors. I don't know, but there are rumors about that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, part of your content has been doing bike reviews and things like that. How do you balance reviewing different bikes and dealing with the different fits when you're prepping for an event? I mean, does that affect your preparation at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've realized that in recent times, you don't want to be changing bikes and bits and pieces. In fact, before the Men's Masters Nationals last year, I actually tested a saddle and the saddle gave me hip flexor issues, which I carried
Hmm.
into the event. Or just from changing a saddle and just from riding the saddle for 3 or 4 times, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you should never be changing your position, never be changing bits and pieces on your bike leading into an event because quite often you'll be training quite hard leading into that event. So it's been a learning, and this year, as you know, I'm surrounded by bikes as we speak. I've got a BMC team machine behind me. I've got a Factor O2 VAM, a Merida Reacto, a Giant, Propel, and a Winspace 1500
Is this your
all
Can I
COVID
put
around
you on
me.
compliant?
speakerphone so you can run that list off to my wife because she thinks I have too many bikes?
Um,
Is that your COVID compliant audience today?
yeah. Classic.
But I'm ching.
Yeah. So, but I'm getting it out of the way now. So when I do train for this event, I'm just going to stick with the bike behind me, which is my favorite bike, which is the BMC team machine, and I won't go off that. I have 8-12 weeks leading into the event.
By the way, tan walls, love it.
Yeah,
I'm
They're good, aren't
overcome
they? They
walls.
really make a
Oh
bike
yeah.
pop.
they
Oh
do.
yeah.
They do. You kind of answered one of our previous questions. I thought that was going to be your answer with the BMC being your favorite bike because you've been pretty highly spoken about that a few times on the channel.
Yeah, no, I do. Look, I still miss the tarmac, the specialized tarmac. I never owned the SL6, but I rode it a few times for a number of weeks, and I like that. Although I felt like it was a little bit too aggressive and twitchy. I preferred the SL5, even though it was a bit heavier. I haven't ridden the SL7, but I fantasize about that, even though it's 18 grand or something like that. Ridiculous.
I've heard that across a lot of people that have had, tarmacs over the years, that there is something special about that bike that no one has really been able to like kind of quantify, but they all seem to be like, yeah, it was sweet. And I don't know why, but
Well, so I know some people that have spent a lot of time over in China and have spent a lot of time at different manufacturing plants. And the three people that I know have proactively said, I haven't asked. So I just know what's it like, what have you seen? They've all, in a roundabout way, said the way Specialized finish their bikes, the quality of the product, the way it's manufactured, even though it's manufactured by Merida, because Merida are owned 49% is Specialized.
yeah,
Mhm.
They said that they are a standout out of all bikes in all the industries. So I don't exactly know what that means. Like it's finished better, like the product quality is better, like the way it's manufactured is
could it be
is at a
QC as
higher
well?
standard. What's that?
Could it be like quality control as well?
Quality control. Yeah. So they've
Yeah.
obviously got things in place. And then maybe that's why you can justify now spending so much on that bike. I still don't think I could. But yeah, certainly that bike has stood out. But the thing I love about the BMC is it's so comfortable. You get on it and it feels like an armchair, and it's still aggressive and it's fast and it's an all round race bike, but you just feel like you can ride the thing all day long. And the recent tweaks and changes they've made, the one gripe I used to have with it was it felt a little bit too soft, a little bit too comfortable, but
Yeah.
I've changed it now, tweaked it so it's a bit more aggressive. It's it feels a bit faster, and it still maintain a lot of that comfort factor. So yeah, I love the bike.
So in terms of RCA and your channel,
Yep.
what can we look forward to in the coming months?
So, look, the RCA channel is very much focused on training tips and bike fitting. So,
Yeah.
it'll continue on that path. Something cool, a cool little project we've got running at the moment is Neill Stanbury, the bike fitter, hasn't really ridden for 6 months. So, he's had a baby. He's basically set up this business up here on the Sunshine Coast. He's got a new outlet where he's operating from. So, for the past 6 months, he hasn't really ridden. And he wants to get his cycling fitness back.
Yeah.
So we've got a series called Zero to Hero, which is about taking him from a very low level of fitness to hopefully his once best. So
I love that
people
idea.
Yeah, if people are interested in that, they can tune into the Road Cycling Academy and watch that series.
What do you
Or if
think the
people,
chances are we'll get him his sprint over 1,000 watts?
I don't know. And look, it's like, what's your motivation for that, Neil? You've never been a sprinter. Why do you want to get to 1,000
I
watts?
know he talked about that in your first episode about
Yeah,
that.
he did. But look, it's interesting with that because a lot of people that aren't sprinters don't sprint, and you should still always sprint in training a little bit because
Mhm,
what that essentially when you're sprinting, you're working the neuromuscular system. And what happens when you work the neuromuscular system is you wake up muscular fibers that are essentially dormant. And the reason why you wake them up is because the neuromuscular effort is quite it's a full body effort. And you can only go for 10, 15 seconds and your body, it's almost like a shock. Your body goes,
mhm.
wow, that was quite a shock. So as a result of that, it will go to recruit more muscle fibers. And as a result of that, it's kind of like a waterfall effect. It actually has an impact over all your other training zones or over your other systems because you've now
Huh.
got more muscular fibers firing at a VO2 anaerobic level, etc. So that was a bit of a sidetrack. So RCA, yep. If you're into
That's
if you're into
nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
yes, if you're into road cycling training tips, bike fitting, and obviously we've got the Neill Stanbury Zero to Hero. With my channel, it's kind of evolved a lot over the years, and now it's predominantly. I used to have the RCA training tip show on Wednesday, which has now moved to a different channel. So Wednesdays now I've kept as a bit more formal sit down for the road bike reviews, for example. We recently fixed. I've now finally got a bike. Like I'm not good with my hands, and a lot of people go, "This guy knows nothing compared to this guy and that guy," and I get trolled about this. I'm like, yeah, I do know nothing compared to that guy and that guy. I'm like, I do not claim to be technical, when it comes to doing stuff with the bike. I can review a bike and I can understand a bike and I can present it in terms of a review, but in terms of pulling apart a wheel and fixing a problem, like that's not my expertise. So I finally got a bike shop on board in Brisbane who's proven to be quite successful. A guy called Jay Taylor at Taylor Cycles. He fixed the wind space wheel for me recently. So those type of technical videos, or if it's a review on Wednesday and Friday, very much stays the Friday vlog series. What I'm trying to get better at with the Friday vlog series is I feel like in recent times, because it's people say you've got to be regular. If you want good viewers, you want people engaged, you got to have the same time slot and it's got to be regular. It's got to be
Mhm.
weekly. So I have the Friday vlog series and I have so many people emailing me from all over the world, particularly from Europe, UK, from the East Coast of the US. Because most people are asleep by the time I publish the Friday vlog series. You're a bit, and they get up in the morning and they eat their breakfast or have their coffee and they sit on the train or they're sitting at home and they'll watch my video. And
Well, it's because you publish from the future is what
yeah,
happens.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. But people say, I love waking up on a Friday morning knowing that your video is there. And that's like really heartwarming. And I love that.
That's cool.
But what's actually happened off the back of that is because of the Road Cycling Academy and other things that you're doing, as you know, like kids, family, busy lifestyle, sometimes I don't have good content. And I have in recent times, and I'm actually making a video about this in the next week or two. It's going to be part of the video where I'm going to say, look, I've made a bit of a mistake with the channel. And I feel like I have. There's been probably, I'd say, a handful of videos, maybe a bit more this year where I published it on a Friday where I probably shouldn't because I've just sort of like, it's gone to Wednesday or even Thursday. I'm like, oh shit, it's Friday tomorrow. I've got to create a bit of content. What's the content going to be about? And I've sort of picked a topic from thin air and I've created a video. And the video, I've thought, well, this video could be better. I still publish it. And there's some, like you get the trolls and I know who the trolls are. And sometimes you get comments from your supporters and they're the ones that really stick with you. And there's been a
Mhm.
few comments from some supporters, not in recent times, but in this period where I made some of these videos that I'm like, you know what? Like, I I don't have to make a video every Friday. People would much prefer to watch a really awesome bit of content every second Friday
Yeah.
than a half-assed bit of content every Friday. So what I'm what I'm really focusing on now is making my content a lot more. It's got to be good. I've got to be really proud of it. Every time I hit submit, I'm like, I enjoyed watching that. You know what I mean? Versus I've just put this together because it's Friday. So I want to I want my content to be improved. I want it to be better. And I also want to add a layer of, I think, now I'm 3 years into the journey. I'm like, what am I? Am I a cinematic YouTuber, like with drone footage and it's color graded and it's like all these great shots? there's YouTubers out there that can do that. That's not me. I'm more, dick around,
Run and gun.
yeah, like have a laugh. Let's have a laugh. Like,
Yeah.
let's take cycling, and I want people to laugh when they watch my video. So now I'm really trying to incorporate more humor, because I enjoy humor, and I think that's, I'm better at humor than I am at cinematic filming. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer to what's happening with the Cam Nicholls channel, but I have put quite a lot of thought to it recently about what I want out of it, and I want better quality, and I want people to have a laugh when they watch the Friday vlog.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's kind of stood out to me, especially more in recent videos that you've posted, is you don't take yourself too seriously, and I think that's kind of important, especially with certain cycling media tends to do that, and you don't have a problem making fun of yourself, and I think that makes your audience connect to you a little bit stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I appreciate that feedback, and it's good to hear. And I think one of the things, like every sort of sport or activity or industry has got their unique individuals. And I think that with cycling, I think one of the characteristics of a lot of people in cycling is they're very sort of stiff and serious, and, they've got to train a certain way, and everything's got to be perfect, and they've got to have the right tires, and it's got to be the right millimeter, and everything's got to be sort of like really,
The
and
anal retentive cyclist. That's what you're saying?
yeah, anally retentive. That is the perfect term. And I think there's a lot of those out there, and that's fine if you want to be like that. But I am like the complete opposite of that. And that's, that's what I want to get across. It's okay to not be like that. You can just go enjoy riding your bike because you like riding your bike.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
No doubt. Well, Cam, we wrap up every episode with a dream bike segment, and so we'll flip that question to you. Obviously,
Okay.
you've ridden countless bikes and reviewed many of bikes, but what's a dream bike for Cam Nicholls?
Long dramatic pause.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I have to say it would probably be this one behind me, which is the BMC Team Machine SLR01, but it would be the one. I'm on the 3, which is it's the top of the range frame, but it's the mediocre group set.
Okay.
So it's SRAM Force 12 speed with, some okay carbon DT Swiss wheels. So, if I could have the top of the range this with some nice Zip 404s, that would be my dream. I mean, I've been fortunate enough through Bike Chaser, and now I've reviewed so many bikes and tested so many, so I kind of know what a lot of them feel and ride like. And even if I don't, based off the geometry and design, I kind of feel like I know what they're going to look like. So I feel like with the BMC, I'm not a plug, I don't get paid for BMC. I wish I did. I wish they gave me bikes, but they don't. That would be it. What about you guys? I'd love to know yours.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
mine, as we talked yesterday, I'm a type 1 diabetic. And so mine is not so much for the make and model, but it is for the team that rides it. So I would love to get my hands on one of the Colnagos that Team Novo Nordisk rides on and
Nice.
raced on for a year. That would just be a really cool bike for me to have, one of the, the one that Charles Planet rode, or just to have the bike that a type 1 diabetic raced at the highest level for a year. That would be a dream
Absolutely.
bike for me.
Yeah, I like that story.
Mine is, it's a little odd in some ways. So I'm weird. I love metal bikes, right?
You really build this up into
I
oddness
did,
and
yeah,
weirdness.
and yeah. But honestly, I'd really love a Linsky R500
Okay.
titanium.
Nice.
I like the mix of carbon and metal. Like my primary road bike right now is actually aluminum and carbon. I love that mix of kind of stability, but R500 disc would be amazing in titanium. And I don't know. I feel like once you get a tie bike, you've like won the bike game, and it's
Yeah,
like something
I hear what you're
special.
saying. I hear what you're saying. I've ridden a tie bike once. There's a brand in Australia called it's eluding me right now, but I got to ride their titanium bike, which had a mix of carbon fiber in it as well,
Okay.
for about 3 or 4 weeks. And the feel on the road was just different. Like
Yeah.
aluminium and carbon, they kind of, yeah, you can feel the difference, but it's kind of, it's pretty similar. But titanium kind of like is like in different league.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone from Linsky is listening, which I know they're not, I would love an R500 in matte satin. If you could just send that over in a 56, that'd be
Classic.
stellar. Also, the HED wheels would be nice to have as well. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's I don't know. Like I just love that. I love metal. There's just something special about it. I mean, I finally have, well, kind of technically, because both Nick and I own the bike, but
Yeah, we have joint custody on it.
we bought a TT bike, and so that's all. It's all carbon, but up until that point, I'd never had an all carbon bike, and I never really understood what the deal was. And I was like, it's like I rode. What do you have, Nick? I always forget. Is it a Monda or
No,
Damani?
I have a Domani.
Okay. Yeah, I rode his Damani for the first time, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. I just wasn't like sold. And then I've been riding this TT bike a little bit more in preparation for this race, and I was just like, okay, I see what the deal is. I get it. Like, I understand, but I still love aluminum. So like,
Mm. We call it aluminium in Australia.
I was actually watching something that they proved that that's the appropriate or the correct
Oh,
pronunciation.
did they? Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
based on the origin of the word.
It sounds like you must have been in quite a YouTube rabbit hole to get to that.
some days I wonder if Nick actually has a job because he'll be like, did you see this on GCN or did you see this on so and so? And I was like, dude, like, I don't know. That's a rabbit hole.
See, I do the content, you do the editing. But Cam, seriously, thanks for coming on. Enjoyed the conversation and the laughs, and looking forward to seeing more from Cam Nicholls' channel and also the Road Cycling Academy.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review wherever you listen. It helps us get more listeners just like you. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you'd like to help support this podcast, please consider contributing to us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. We're always open to suggestions for topics, advice, and interviews. If you have a topic you'd like to hear about, be sure to drop us a line at 5339cycling.com/topics. That's 5339cycling.com/topics. Or email us at info@5339cycling.com. And we're on. We need a one and done.
This week on the 5339 podcast, we're talking about Cam Nicholls. Enjoy.